Welcome, everybody. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Sherborn School Committee meeting for Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. My name is Dennis Quant, and I call this meeting to order at 5:31 p.m. We're pleased to hold this meeting, this open meeting, at Sherborn Town Hall this evening, and we're also live streaming with DSC TV. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. We also have a Zoom link for those that are unable to attend in person. First up are community comments. Before we get started and kind of give the soliloquy at the beginning, is there anybody that wishes to give a community comment?
Nope.
Nope.
I saw one no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then, hearing none, we'll kind of continue on. Beth, I think you're up next for the superintendent update.
Great. Well, thank you and good evening. I gave a very thorough report, or at least hope it was thorough for you, at our last meeting with the two other school committees. And so I don't have much to add except a second expression of gratitude to Dr. Brown and Ms. Gullingsrud for a smooth opening of school at Pine Hill. And for overcoming a few blips the first week or so, but smooth sailing otherwise, and everything was handled with grace and grit. So thank you to you and your team, and our educators for always supporting kids, and of course all of the work that happened from June 13th on to get us ready to this point, and those involved. So I just wanted to express a thank you, and looking forward to a great year ahead.
Great.
In terms of the air quality, do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to hold that agenda item? I'm happy to talk a little bit about it, and then Dawn can add in as well.
Yep.
So as you know, Pine Hill School is our one school in the district that does not have air conditioning. And so when June comes around and September comes around, we often hope for cool days. That unfortunately doesn't always happen. And a week and a half ago, we had a stretch of 4 really warm days, and usually we can manage with it 1 or 2 days. It does get uncomfortable, but come the third day, if we have high temperatures and high humidity, it does become very difficult to teach and to learn in that building. We do have some classrooms in some spaces with some air conditioning, but certainly not enough to accommodate all of our students and all of our staff, even as we rotate. Dawn has done a lot of work with John McGee, our Director of Facilities, in terms of bringing in external units to borrow for times. We've tried different arrangements and moving them around. We haven't perfected it yet, but Dawn can give you kind of an update on those pieces, and given her institutional knowledge and work on several school committees and with DS, where we might go from here.
So as you know, we brought in cooling, commercial air coolers. Obviously can't do the whole building, but we were trying to have at least cooled spaces in the auditorium. We put them in the library as well. They're similar to the ones that I had in your June report, because we did this for a week in June. So it gives us some relief, but it certainly doesn't touch the classrooms, which is what we were up against this year. With as Beth said, the stretch. So as you know, we did a early release day, and just to sort of for the community too to understand, we've only ever done 2 early release days for heat. I think there was some communication out there that said we've had more heat related early releases than we've had snow. So I just wanted to clarify that, at least in the last 10 years, and I think even further, we've only had 2 early releases for heat. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So we did try to think outside the box. Where could we go where there's air conditioning that's close? And so we thought about the newly reopened library. So, that was a trial. We pulled it together at like 2:30 on Thursday. And so I think there was some relief knowing that at least the kindergartners are in air-conditioned spaces. So that was actually hopefully a good learning day for our youngest learners. But building upon that, we're looking at sort of longer term, short term and longer term solutions to this. So we've had 2 schools in the district who did not have air conditioning and have followed a path to get air conditioning, one being Chickering and one being the middle school. So we do have sort of a plan that we can follow, a roadmap. So the very first thing that we're recommending, the school committee sort of okay for us to do, and we'll have more information in October, is actually to do a feasibility study with an engineering firm who would come in and look at the building and assess if there's anything that we could currently do with our systems that would give us better air control, and also what would be solutions. Both sort of say that we're going to be in the building for, say, maybe 7 to 10 more years. What is a possible solution? And then might as well go and look at what they would say for long term. But they'll come in and do that study. That's what they do. And that follows what we did at both Chickering and the middle school for the first step. So we need someone from the outside, right, to come. We obviously know we have a temperature issue that needs to be addressed. So I think you've sort of crossed that hurdle. But I also think then the next step is we need someone from the outside to come and give us some a roadmap of what we can potentially do. And then we'll have that information and we'll see what next steps we can take. Piggybacking on that, I said short-term and long-term because we're working with a building that is certain parts of it are on the older side. So we do need to think long-term. And so the second step that we would undertake is have an architectural firm come in and do a building assessment for us and say, looking at sort of your building, the foundation, your mechanical systems, what is the life left in this building, and is it something that we can fix and move on, or based on how it's constructed and sort of 21st learning environments, is it something that we can't make sort of work for what we need? And that then is the basis for moving into the longer term process of looking at applying for a new building. We'll be honest, we talked about that. That's an investment on the town's part because there's a lot of steps that you have to take before you even submit sort of your request to what they call the Massachusetts Schools Building Association. So it's a prolonged process, but it makes sense to get started now. And we did meet with the town, as Beth said, yesterday. Seems like it was so long ago. Because we needed buy-in, right? So we can't take this on alone. We need the town to also support this movement, and it appears that the support is there. So in October, what we're hoping is that we're putting our feelers out to both engineering firms. We're currently working with an architectural firm, and I think that was in your June report too, at the region, that we're hoping to sort of piggyback on and ask them to give us a proposal for Pine Hill, so that we would have a little bit more of, so we're going to do this study, so what's the financial cost of the study? You have opportunity to use your building fund, and it actually works out well. You actually have your special revenue revolving fund statement in your packet tonight, so you can get a feel of what we have and fund it from that. So because we obviously haven't built it into the budget. At the same time, it sounds like the town potentially would approve for us to have a budget appropriation to cover a study. So we were thinking the school committee could cover the engineering study for the air cooling study, and that the town might be able to cover the larger scope of looking at the architectural building structure. But we have to sort of do some reach outs to that, get some current numbers of what those studies would cost, and move from there. So we'll hopefully have that for you at your October meeting. But there are steps in place, and like I said, we've done this. And there's someone who's done it, both at Chickering and the middle school. So it's almost, we can sort of do it in our sleep now because we've had some practice. And I will say, as Beth said, I actually was on Dover School Committee when we started it, and actually was in the business office when we did the install. So I've seen both pieces and how that works.
Excellent. So like to tie a couple things together, those subcommittees that we reviewed over the past couple weeks or so, I'm on the facilities subcommittee and also being chair, so I'm going to be involved in this from sort of our team. for the foreseeable future here. But I think the team here is doing a ton of work to make sure that we've got the information to support sort of a good decision-making process with no sort of foregone conclusions. Let's let the data take us to where we're kind of gonna go. Nothing to vote on tonight, but to kind of summarize at a very high level, we think that there's a need for 2 different studies to be able to start gathering that information. One specifically related to what can we do around the temperature and just sort of general cooling in the building, given sort of what the building looks like today. And that's to, again, answer a question, short, medium, and long term, what would options be available to us? These are folks that are engineers. They're specifically focused on looking at and solving these kinds of issues in, commercial kind of buildings like this. But Dawn is looking to kind of get some quotes and make sure that we've got a couple good slates to kind of look at our next meeting. The second study would be for that building and sort of starting to step back and understand that these 2 issues, while not the same, are clearly linked. You don't want to spend a ton of money on something if it's going to get repurposed. Understanding what the life expectancy is of some of these systems, and there's different options and whatnot. So kind of try to tear down all of that and understand what does that actually mean for the town and for us. So that second study would be to look at the efficacy kind of the building as a whole. Does it support 21st century learning? What are the needs of a building that supports 450 people every day coming in to learn and whatnot? So it's totally unrelated to the AC, but those 2 studies together likely would give us the information we need to kind of start making some educated decisions on path forward.
Can I
Good.
ask a question? Is that allowed? Question?
Yeah, of course.
For the second piece of that, is a component like forecasting for population growth? I know there's a lot of building being discussed in town, and whether we might have more students at some point in the future, or would that be an input to
I think
some
that
of
would be a part 2.
Part
So
2,
part
okay.
1 is to determine that this building is probably no longer, the longevity of it
Got
is not there, so that we need to pivot. And then when you pivot, you would then, when you go to do the building design, then you would start looking at enrollment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we're keeping an eye too on the MSBA application and what that would look like if we do apply to the state for a new building, as well as keeping an eye on best practice with security, because clearly that's a priority of the district, as well as green initiatives and sustainability, and all these pieces would fold together nicely. So we want to make sure we don't have to do things twice, that we're keeping all of these factors together, and that we can kind of all move forward as quickly as possible.
And I'm sure everyone's working with, green companies and really looking at how we can utilize, the technology to have a green space within this new school. I think the sustainability committee has also been kind of looking at this too. So it is really going to be a great opportunity for some great minds to come together.
Right. And I think MSBA sets certain parameters, and with the overall state's goal of their green goals, then I'm sure it's built into, like, you're almost going to be forced to follow some of that, because that's the direction the state's going.
Potentially some incentives maybe too.
Right. Exactly.
And there's plenty of districts around us that we are in touch with who've recently gone through this process and have beautiful buildings to show for it. In fact, the new elementary school in Ashland is geothermal, and
Yes.
we're hearing rave
Yes.
reviews about what a beautiful, well-climated space it is.
Okay.
So lots of things to think about.
So it's not just a money issue, right? There's multifaceted. There's going to be, to your point, lots of different minds sort of put into the pot to come up with decisioning. But I want to make sure that it's clear that these are linked but separate sort of work streams in many ways that we need to think about. And I think the other point that I want to make sure is sort of very clear is that this team has done an incredible amount of work since sort of the beginning of last spring to kind of preempt some of this, right? We got 2 or 3 days in the building, even when it was starting to warm up, with some of the extra cooling that you guys brought in. So it really got to a tipping point on that Thursday afternoon, Friday, when you ended up having to do the busing. So that was we didn't plan for maybe that long, and I think it's another example of how, we're really at the point where we need to take this seriously, not that we haven't previously, but kind of make moves to actually get a decision going. So thank
How
you for
did
all
the
of that.
visit to the library work out? I mean, I heard from my 4th grader, but for the library, for the schools, was it a positive experience?
The library staff could not have been more gracious
Wonderful.
and welcoming of us. It teachers went with what they could carry, and some of our kids appreciated the adventure. Some of our kids were a little thrown by the adventure. So it was it wasn't an optimal day of learning, for sure. But again, the library staff could not have been more gracious and welcoming.
Great. Community comments have closed, but given your proximity to some of these issues, Richard, and in sort of the district as a whole,
I'm Richard Robinson. I apologize. I meant to be here for the public comment period. I looked at an old calendar that had this meeting over at the middle school.
Oh, sorry.
So, anyway, that's okay. I appreciate time. I'll try not to take very much of it. And I recognize I am preaching to the choir about the importance of getting good, cool air for students at Pine Hill. I come here with two hats, only one hat, but two hats. The first is I'm a taxpayer in this town. I went to Pine Hill when I was in elementary school. I served on the regional school committee for 9 years. That's the other hat. As I think you know, I was sort of point person for middle school air conditioning. I want to make two major points. The first as a taxpayer, and that is, and I'm sorry if this sounds contentious, but here it is as a taxpayer. Every day that students are not in an optimal learning environment, we're wasting my money, and we're wasting the money of everybody in this town. It may be that you will have to waste money to solve this problem faster than ideal, but in fact, we're already wasting. And we ought to be wasting money making sure that the kids are able to learn every single day that they arrive. And they are not at the moment, regardless of what the mitigation measures are. That's the first thing. The second point is my experience shepherding this through the middle school was greatly helped by having classroom hour-by-hour data, which made it very clear to even the most skeptical townsperson that there was a serious uncontrolled problem at the middle school. I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think you have that data that you can just pull together. And that's a shame, but it should not stop you. It is absolutely the case that the reports that you have from kids, from parents, from teachers, from administrators are all you need to take to town meeting and say, this is an unsupportable educational environment. We are wasting your money, and we don't want to do that another single day. And all the money that you need to solve that problem should come up at town meeting. So we'll make one final point about that, and that is you have excellent administrators, and you have a town that will stand behind you. But my experience was it really required leadership from the school committee, not from the administration, not from anyone else, but from the school committee, to be unpleasant and unrelenting in solving this problem and solving it quickly as fast as you possibly can. That's what I would suggest you commit yourselves to, and don't let anyone stand in your way. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One point that I think was brought up that I think makes sense to bring up is that we approve the capital expenditure for the building management, energy management system, which will enable us to capture some, maybe not to level of specificity that would be ideal, but some of the data to support.
But we have been
some of this.
capturing data for these last couple of weeks in school. The first week of school opened and we were fine. So the last 2 weeks we've actually been tracking data. So we can take real data off the current system. So we've been taking screenshots of that and then putting that into a spreadsheet, capturing data at 8, 12, and release time. So we do have those data points for the last 2 weeks. I don't know if they're still doing it because we're okay, but we did take it during those times, and even took it in the. I had them go back and start capturing the kindergarten rooms that actually had the air conditioners in it to see what those window units, what they were able to handle when we were hitting the high 80s, low 90s. And one of the other factors that hurt us with this heat was the level of humidity that was with this heat. And so at least the ACs we brought in, the commercial machines, would actually at least pull out some of that moisture, and that does help comfort. So, and we have purchased several new over the last 2 years, a lot more dehumidifiers that are running on a normal basis anyway, definitely in the library wing, in those lower classrooms because of the humidity, and that does sort of help us on those days where it's not 90 but humid. So it's sort of a twofold solution, which even last week it was in the 70s, but the humidity was horrible. So we've kept the air conditioner units running there because at least it would draw out some of the humidity. So that's another piece that the engineers will look at to see if there's anything in our current systems that would help us sort of manage the humidity better than we are. So they will look at a lot of things. So I actually brought a sample report to share with Dennis and the people we met with yesterday from Chickering's, just to show that they do look at your existing systems to see if there's anything that we can do with the existing systems to manage any of this. And then obviously their last recommendation would be install some form of AC. So that's sort of how their reports would fall, just to make sure that we've exhausted. Again, for people to ask, have you maximized everything you can do? That'll allow us to say we have.
Thank you. Any other questions?
It's so good to see you, Richard. It's like the old days. It's like the old days.
What's my?
It's like the old days to see you again.
Yeah, so I will tell you I'm half deaf, and so I actually have a hard time hearing. So one more time.
No, I said it's great to see you.
Well, thank you very
We
much.
sat next to each other many years as
Can I
chair.
say one more thing then, just based on this, just not that part of it. Based on having done everything. We spent a lot of time, too much time really, trying to not spend money to solve this problem. I looked at painting the roofs and putting in putting in ceiling fans and shifting classrooms around and building the high school. None of it solved the problem, and all of it was wasting time. The only solution to this is really air conditioning. Yeah, that's all. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to give a summary, or do you? His content was in the package, so.
Sure, Denny, you provided an update. I'm sorry, are we done with the air conditioning? Yeah, you provided an update in the packet relative to the pilot. Is there anything that you'd like to say, or would you rather give a more detailed presentation next month?
I mean, I can give a little overview of where we stand. So last time, I think I spoke to all of you about the elementary math pilot. We had completed what I call a limited pilot last year, where we were piloting two programs, Eureka Squared and Illustrative Math. And we had teachers pilot one unit of each of those programs. So the information we got was very, very limited. At the end of the year, we got feedback from teachers using the rubric that we had created based upon the state's rubric for evaluating curriculum materials. And we decided that Eureka Squared wasn't going to kind of meet the needs of our students. It was going to require an enormous amount of extra legwork on the teachers to be able to make that program work and to differentiate the program for students. We also had a really valuable data source, which is our math coach and I did a bunch of interviews with math directors kind of locally to hear about the programs they used, about their adoptions. So we got kind of that additional data. We decided that there was enough information from illustrative math to continue looking into that as a program, but we felt like we didn't want to be hasty and make a decision to adopt a whole new math curriculum, with the limited information we had. So we made the decision to go along with an extended pilot this year where we would do a full year of illustrative math, and we, having talked to other math curriculum directors throughout the area and doing some research online, getting a lot of samples, we decided that another program called Reveal Math would be worth piloting as well. So this year in our extended pilot, we have 2 teachers in each grade, and that's between Chickering Elementary School and Pine Hill Elementary School, that are going to be piloting a full year of Reveal Mathematics and a full year of Illustrative Mathematics. In addition to this, we're planning on doing site visits to other districts that are implementing these programs, with the goal that we'll be able to make a really informed decision and potentially make a recommendation to you all in school committee sometime in the spring about potentially adopting and implementing a new math curriculum at the elementary level. What was I going to say about that as well? One thing that's really helpful about doing this year-long pilot is that both of these programs require a shift for teachers and for students in how they think about math and how they think about problem solving. So when we did just the 1 unit last year, there are a lot of thinking routines, a lot of things that get built in at the beginning of the year as you're ramping up in the curriculum that students didn't get to experience. So I feel like we're going to get the full experience of these two programs this year, again, so that we can make a really educated decision to potentially recommend a new math program going forward. Both programs, again, very, very well researched. They are in a lot of other comparable districts throughout the state. And I've linked in the information that was in your packet, as well as on our Math Pilot website, to the Ed Reports, which gives all the research and the factual information behind these two programs and kind of how what they've been based upon and what information has been used to inform those programs. So for people who are interested, there's a wealth of information about these two programs to look into. I think that's the update. Questions?
Questions? No. Denny, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Denny.
No problem.
Dr. Brown.
Good evening. In my school committee report, I highlighted the remarkable opening that we had, the actual opening, the first couple days. I mean, buses were running on time. It was a miracle here in Sherborn. Our students transitioned well. The first couple days of school can be tricky for some students with separating and getting back in the routine, and it really, I think I said, and I may have jinxed us, I said it was our best opening ever. And then the heat, and then the contractor that tried to get in the back door. So we've been giggling since, but it really was a remarkable opening of school, and I, echo Beth's sentiments with our custodial staff and our teachers behind the scenes were at the ready and poised to greet their new students. We had about 90 days of summer curriculum work that we were able to compensate teachers to engage in. There's certainly a lot of work that goes on over the summer, but actual shifting and lifting of curriculum instruction and assessment through proposals that teachers submit to us, and we have the mechanisms to approve, so a lot of work went on across all grade levels, across all content areas. So teachers came back feeling organized with good focus. I introduced in writing our 8 new educators and 4 educational assistants. I always say one of the things that we do well at Pine Hill is hire. We hire well, and our new staff have hit the ground running. You see some special educators, 2 new classroom teachers in support of existing teachers who are out on maternity and extended family leave. As a school principal, you hesitate to answer your phone or read your emails from colleagues right before school opens, and unfortunately one of our Spanish teachers did resign with hours to go before school opened, and we did a search, and we found a great candidate who's starting with us officially tomorrow. So we look forward to introducing Yolanda Williams to our students in kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 4th grade. She'll have some good support with, we have 1 Spanish teacher colleague that she will partner with at Pine Hill, and there were 3 over at Chickering, and they work impressively as a unified department. So we're excited to support our Spanish teacher in that way, in that she's starting a little bit out of the gate. I talked about some of the professional development that we've been laying groundwork and embedding. I am so impressed with the articulation and clarity of our district goals and areas for improved growth, and how Beth and Denny have coordinated through our summer leadership retreat and our ongoing leadership meetings, so that each building principal is very clear on what the big focus areas of growth and improvement are, and yet making sure we have the autonomy and support to customize those areas for improvement within the culture and the conditions of teaching and learning within our own buildings and based on our student needs. So there's a very robust support for the areas that we're focusing on, and it truly is impressive. So thank you. So I talked about how Denny worked with some of our teacher leaders, K through 12, over the summer, and those teacher leaders at the elementary level, that looks like team leaders for respective departments and grade levels called PLC leaders, professional learning community leaders, and those are stipended positions for teachers who meet regularly with their administrators and plug in through the assistant superintendent for coaching strategies and student learning improvement areas. And so those teacher leaders will now be taking over and facilitating our professional development tomorrow. And again, we have teacher conferences in October, but the next professional day will be November 1st. So those are very coordinated. Our focus are very coordinated with the district best practices and the continued work using the cultural audit tool to make sure that we are proficient and well-resourced across all content areas. And then those teacher leaders report back with us, and we refine, and we, in January and February, we will be bringing in some outside consultants to help us facilitate connected professional development opportunities across both elementary schools, around making sure all of our students have access and differentiation, and that teachers are planning lessons and bigger picture units of study with all of the innovation and best practices that we're talking about. So it's very well coordinated for the year. I talked a little bit about how our instructional coaches are busy in supporting teachers who are piloting new materials. You heard about math. Our K through 2 teachers are in, it's not a new curriculum, but it is a revised units of study that Lucy Calkins, our guru of the Reader's Workshop model, in the units of study that we used. So our teachers are in new units of study that are better balancing the art of teaching reading and writing with the science of teaching, in particular reading. So all of the, a lot of things we used to supplement behind the scenes, teachers are now finessing with better coordination in our existing workshop model. We have, I mentioned 2 new classroom teachers this year, and we have 3 of our classroom teachers who were new to grade level. So that's 5 teachers, approximately 25% of our teachers at Pine Hill. So the coaches spend extra time helping to shift and lift, or what we call unpack the curriculum. So teachers, Ms. Aguilar and whomever's at the helm, are ready to have more schema and understanding of what it is they're teaching, along with the support that their grade level colleagues provide. And I talked a little bit about the work that Allison Gullinger, the assistant principal, and I are doing with our teacher leaders this year. We had a really great first meeting with our PLC leaders last week, a week ago today, and we talked about, we dug deeper into the distinctions between working as a group versus working as a team, and what high-level teaching teams are intended are intended to look like and how we are intended to go from that congenial, I'm happy to share, if you have any questions, let me know, to really pushing each other's thinking on behalf of our students so that we, that job embedded professional development, that's how teachers grow, and we all have strengths and we all have areas where we can learn from our colleagues. So we're trying to be very intentional with how we focus what sometimes feels a little uncomfortable in our very polite and convivial profession to really push each other's thinking. Many fabulous activities that have happened or are in the queue for happening. Our Metco Friends and Family Barbecue was this past Sunday. The good news about the heat wave, or no, this was rain induced, I'm sorry. Our CSA ice cream social that was supposed to happen last week, we now get to look forward to this week. Open houses on the horizon and back to school curriculum night. And so we're really excited. There's nothing more exciting than that back to school time of year. It really is exhilarating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I also shared an example. I won't go into good detail, but this is the time of year where we meet with every educator and we set their professional practice goals and student learning goals that to help teachers grow and reach for deeper and more comprehensive practices. So I gave an example of what we are really recommending for teachers to focus on as part of their professional growth this year. And it aligns hand in glove with our school improvement and our district goals.
Questions? Nope.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Warrants.
So you have in your packet the warrants, both your wrap-up for fiscal year '23, so that's the ones that were processed after your last meeting, as well as what we've processed through the summer for right now. And it gives you just a flavor, again, of the different funds we use, and you don't really see the detail, but I always offer that if there's anyone who wants to go look at the detail, they're always kept here at Town Hall, as well as we keep copies at the central office if anyone ever would just are curious, would just like to see them. And it looks to me like, Dennis, you're the signer, so you're coming over here and signing?
I will be going forward.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for that. Moving right on to the budget, actually the closeout. So September is when we sort of bring to close the fiscal year that just ended. Next month, I'll bring you your first snapshot of fiscal year '24 operations. We're still getting people onto payroll, spreading some reserves, so it's premature to bring it forward. So this is our tradition to just use this meeting to close out the previous year. So nothing has really changed since we last met in June. I sort of summarized the report a little more tighter just because this is your year-end report. The issue we had last year was in our out-of-district, so you can see that out-of-district we actually did run over budget by a little over $300,000. We had asked the town for an additional $300,000 in appropriations, which they did approve, and I reminded you of how that broke out, we were able to cover a little bit of that with operations. So at the end, if you consider that they were going to give us an additional $300,000 of appropriations, our deficit was $285,917. So we didn't quite need it all, which was our hope and our goal. Again, we are just really appreciative that the town stepped up and helped us. This is actually something that's beyond our control. And again, it could happen again this year. It's just a very volatile piece of our budget that you could predict. You can't predict. So we do our best at budgeting, but it is very unpredictable. Any questions on sort of just the wrap up of the fiscal year ⁻23 financials?
Just one, it's unpredictable because you don't know what students will need from year to year? Is that the right way to think
It's
about
because
that,
we don't know if student needs to be outplaced.
Okay.
So it sometimes, you get move-ins, which we have some protection for move-in, but then there may be someone that we've tried to keep in district. And remember, your budget covers age 3 to 22. So sometimes things, happen at the region. So it's not Pine Hill, but it's at the region, older kids might need to be placed out, and then those are the unknowns that it's hard for us to predict, especially given that your budget was finally approved like the second week of March. So if you think about how much time even has happened since then, we do our best of predicting what we know in March. Well, that's a lot of months even before you get to the end of the school year, so that things can happen.
Thank you.
As far as the budget goes. So yeah, that's a key thing, just remember, and that's why we're so specific about breaking out the in-district and then your out-of-district, because the in-district we have control over and we really need to manage that budget. The out-of-district, we do the best that we can manage, but there's things out of our control, and we work really hard never to have whatever's happening in out-district have a direct impact on your in-district. Like, we would never say, put a freeze on your in-district because we have out-of-district, because we look at it as two separate budgets and sort of manage them that way, and that's what's fair in that scenario. So just know that's, you know, we never say we can't do something in an in-district because we've had an unknown placement in the out-of-district. So we work with the town, you know, there's the stabilization fund that's there to protect, and then circuit breaker. So we'll be talking about more of those come October. And then we also then presented just the roll forward for as of June 30th for your special revenue and revolving funds. You know, we've talked about your non-resident tuition fund. We did vote in August, I think, to approve, because we do have 2 students attending Pine Hill, so you will see a bump to that fund, which is good. It's a safety net for you. And then you can see that we did spend circuit breaker down to 0. In the past, we've had a cushion there that we've carried, but because of what happened, we depleted all of circuit breaker last year. So that's just a number to look at as well. And we'll present this report to you on a quarterly basis. But as we talked about the building rental, that's where we have some flexibility to fund some of these studies. And I would say it's a combination of revenue source of your SHEETA. We do charge SHEETA rent to use the building, because it's a region program running at Pine Hill, as well as the big rental of the gym predominantly for basketball. But that brings in revenue too. So those are the sources for you for the revenue. And in the notes, we try to include sort of a highlight of the expenses that took place in those funds over the course of the year. And then you just have a summary of what we talked about previously on some of just the building. So you sort of have it in writing a little bit what we talked about at the beginning of the meeting.
One of the things you guys will hear about for newer members is we've invested a lot over the past couple of years in the in-district sort of supports that we have for some students, which is actually, I want to say limiting, because we focus on what that individual needs, but there's a lot more services that our school can provide that if you were to roll back 10 or 15 years, we may not have had the expertise to be able to kind of provide those services. So that's one avenue that we've used to try to standardize and sort of forecast
Try to keep
out
as many
and
students
manage
in as
that
possible.
cost.
Yeah. The Goals program is a perfect example of that, and it's the Goals program as where we're able to maybe potentially take students from other districts, because you want a cohort. You've already got a program there, and so that's the beauty of that.
Thanks. Anything else? No? Cool. All right. Pine Hill Improvement Plan.
So as Dr. Brown already mentioned, last week at the joint meeting, you heard about the district improvement plan, strategic plan, the superintendent's goals, and that then helps frame the school improvement goals, which help frame the teacher goals that you have in your packet. So you had the first read of the school improvement plan in June. So I didn't know, Dr. Brown, if there's any brief updates that you need to provide or context about what may have happened between June and now, or...
Yes, we did a lot of refining of our school improvement plan. I'm very guilty of wanting to include everything, you know, what do they say, the kitchen sink. And we had some really great reflection and thinking time at our leadership retreat this summer, focused on the district goals. And we we felt we were definitely on the right track where we were focusing in our school improvement plan, but we unmuddled some of the, the goals versus the action steps always kind of get tangled. And so we've refined and tried to make realistic the work that we're doing around, continuing to bring innovation to teaching and learning, to make sure that we are inclusive, that all of our students have access, that our teachers are using the universal design practices to, which is best practice in our business for designing units of study, and to improve. There's always room for improvement, or to engage our families and communicate more clearly and more comprehensively, which almost sounds like an oxymoron, but with our families. So the big blush areas that we're focusing on haven't changed, but we tried to be a little more organized in the buckets of big picture action steps. Dennis, I know we always talk about how will we know, make things measurable, and there's always improvement in that, but we tried to use a lot of a balance of qualitative and quantitative ways that will measure the growth of our practices and our student learning.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any questions from June in that update? No? All right, so this is something we have to approve. So request a motion to approve the Pine Hill Improvement Plan for this year as summarized by Dr. Brown.
Christine Walsh, so moved.
Thank you, Christine. Second?
Becca Hammond, second.
Thank you, Becca. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, approved. So thank you. Good work, everybody. Let's see. Final item to approve tonight is a consent agenda, which just includes the minutes from our meeting back in June. I don't know if anybody had a chance to review. Is there any edits or anything? I had 2 quick spelling errors. Christina is Christine.
I'm so
I'm
used
sure
to
you
it.
get
It's
that a lot.
okay, but thank you.
But just for the official record.
Yep,
And
thank
then superintendent, our bullet 5 is spelled wrong, but minor. So I think with those 2 edits, I'd request a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented in our package for tonight.
So moved, Christine Walsh.
Thank you, Christine. Second?
Amanda Brown, second.
Thank you, Amanda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, approved. And then there's a bunch of stuff in the communications, just things for calendar for this coming year. There's been a little bit of shuffling just to make sure that everything kind of aligns. As we had discussed, I think most of our meetings are going to happen in the middle school.
Yes.
So I would say plan on that unless otherwise noticed. So obviously included in the agenda going out. Subcommittee assignments, thank you again for feedback and whatnot. We made a couple changes at the end just to sort of smooth levels of responsibility, as well as just thinking about sort of succession planning and whatnot, making sure that all of us get exposure to different things so that as if and when membership changes, it's not left to you guys to fill in the gaps
Thank you.
entirely. And then just awareness, regional and Dover School Committee minutes from their previous meetings at the end of last year. Before we leave, anything that you guys want us to consider for our next meeting in October? No? All right. If there is anything, we're all ears. Anything that comes up, I think it's kind of warranted to get an update here, so appreciate it. Keep your ears to the grounds. And anything else from any of you?
Thank you.
Awesome. Motion to adjourn at, what is it, 6:20? Thank you, Amanda. Do we have to second that?
And then I'll be.
Second?
Christine Walsh, second.
Thanks, Christine. All in favor? All right, adjourned at 6:20.
Perfect. Thank you.
you.